Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. It's a podcast all about aviation and flying in midlife, surviving COVID-19, and all the things that go along with it in our world. My name's Chris. I'm the Midlife Pilot on YouTube. And to my right, your left on screen is Brian Siskind, also Midlife Pilot, music producer, filmmaker, Nashvilleantonian.
Problem child.
Yeah, didn't mute my notifications either. This is starting off really well. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm great. I've actually flown a few times this week. I had a long stint of not doing that because it's been 147 degrees every day, and so I've just been doing the 6 a.m. Flying kind of thing and getting ready for a big long trip. So I'm super excited, and you know how it goes with aviation. After you get your license, you know you get that hungry. If you haven't even gone for a couple of weeks, you sort of feel like, it's leaving me, which is not, but you just feel like it is. So anyway, I've been good, man. I know that you've been in some sort of self-imposed prison.
I've been in a 18 by 15 room now on day number 9 that I've been in this room, and I've had COVID. I tested positive with symptoms last Tuesday, and pretty mild, though really lucky in the grand scheme. Didn't have any, of the scary symptoms, the respiratory stuff or whatever. Had a bad fever for a couple of days, like pushing almost 104. Felt pretty miserable those 2 days, but really just trying to stay away from other people as much as possible and keep it to myself. But so I have not been flying. I have been isolating, and the breaking news today is I got a call from someone who has 5-2 Lima, the Cessna 172 from our club, away out of town currently, and was actually taking a commercial check ride today in it, and did a power off 180 and went to go full power to take off again after landing, and the engine would only make like 2,000 RPM at full power. And this is an engine that is approaching an overhaul time. And so there is some serious question about whether it may be happening earlier than anticipated, although we had somebody on the field look at it. They're meeting back at 7 a.m. tomorrow to really go through it and figure out what the problem is. But there is some speculation, and this would be the best news, that it's electronic and it's in the ignition, it's in the key. It's, could like a short in the actual key that keeps the magnetos firing it properly. So we're hoping.
Oh, so maybe it's just running on one, even
that's
though
what
it's
we're
on
hoping.
both.
Yeah,
okay. That would actually make sense.
They're going to do some digging tomorrow, but that's literally been the breaking news this afternoon that I've been like scrambling to try to coordinate. Like, it's all the complications of having a plane in a club. Like, it's scheduled tomorrow afternoon here. Somebody else is supposed to have it. So I got to tell them, like, it's probably not going to be back tomorrow, blah, blah. So just working the logistics of the plane being 4 hours away. So that's pretty exciting.
As much as I lament not being an airplane owner, there are so many times where I take pause and say, thank God that I'm not an airplane owner at this time. When I hear about, even just what the 100-hour was for the plane that I usually fly, it's just, that's a lot, man. It's a lot. Yeah. So ultimately it's almost like you have to buy 2 planes so that you always have one to fly.
Exactly.
But yeah, so super excited about the conversation tonight. And we always count on people to provide us feedback and thoughts, because we like to put them on the screen. And I know you have a lot of gadgets over there, Chris, where you can press buttons, and we want to keep Chris busy. So let's get the chat in there. But basically what we wanted to sort of get into tonight, and I had just been talking to, I don't know where our guest went, but hopefully hey, look at that.
Hello.
You said you wanted me to push buttons, so
Oh man, that's like the weakest intro ever. That was the least exciting. It's like, where's our guest? Oh, there he is.
Here he is.
There you are.
We should
welcome.
introduce our guest.
Thank you.
Ben put his name in as Ben, but it should say the Sage. Ben is really good at taking compliments, being held in high regard. He likes being called sir. No, Ben is the most humble dude in the world. But for anybody that saw the video that I just put out a week or two ago, Ben is the guy that rescued me off of Ocracoke Island at the midlife pilot fly-in, and we couldn't be happier to have him on with us tonight, because what we're going to be talking about is advice that we've gotten from more experienced pilots that has been particularly valuable, and a little bit of backstory. And sorry, Ben, I will let you talk. I swear to God, at some point. I know you're just dying to.
I'm fine just sitting here.
So a little background on the topic and what we kind of want to get from people is, I've always made it a point to try, and whenever I meet a pilot that clearly has more experience, which is most pilots other than myself, I'm always interested to sort of pull a nugget from them of wisdom, even if it's in passing. So I was, at the airport at 6:00 this morning. The front desk wasn't even there, but there were a couple of guys who were just were getting ready to do a charter jet flight, and we just kind of got to chatting, and I just asked one of the guys, I just said, what is a bit of advice, like what's a nugget that you would have for a newer, less experienced pilot? If you had to pass on one thing, what would you say? And I've done this a lot with a lot of different people that I've come across and gotten a lot of really interesting things. But there's something about the process of asking people in this way, in passing. You're not having a long, labored conversation with somebody about all these different points. It's like they've got one opportunity to think of one thing that comes to mind, and it really, really sticks. So this morning, the thing the guy said, it wasn't like a landmark thing, and it wasn't anything I didn't know about, but I still give extra weight or credibility to it because it's something that he took the time to tell me. And so this morning, what he said was, he said, pay attention to en route weather. And I just thought, okay, if my first thought was like, well, duh, of course, but it really made me kind of take pause for a minute, because you do tend to get focused on the weather where you're taking off and the weather in your destination. It doesn't mean you don't look at weather along the way, but are you really looking at it with the same scrutiny and at a wide enough scope or scale? Be wary of en route weather. It wasn't like anything landmark, but I have a trip coming up where it just made me really think, like, I'm going to give a little bit of extra attention to en route weather. So that's just one of many things, and we'll get to more of them. But Ben, what?
So you know what? To that point, Brian.
Yeah, man.
We all learned when we were going through private pilot that be careful for embedded thunderstorms. That you could be flying over, do a VFR over the top, and watch out for these embedded thunderstorms. But I haven't thought about that until you just told that story where this pilot says, be careful with the en route weather, because it's the same thing. You may think that it's just overcast over your route of flight, but there, especially this time of the year, there could be thunderstorms. It happened to me today. So I think that's a very even though it's a small nugget, it's extremely valuable. Even with somebody with more hours, I get something out of that.
Yeah. So tell me about your flight today, Ben. Where did you fly to and from, and what happened? Or didn't happen?
So for those in the chat, the first thing I want to say is, with the regard of the nickname Sage, I just want you all to know, it's kind of like I'm the kid that was held back in middle school, and so I'm now the oldest in the class, but I am not necessarily the end all be all. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. And y'all, I preach about IFR. I know one dog geese going through it, but today was like a perfect IFR day, and it has rapidly become my favorite time to fly. I went from our base airport, where I'm based out of, is at McCollum, Romeo Yankee Yankee. Went, picked up my boss in Lawrenceville, and then we flew to Huntsville. And I got to shoot 2 instrument approaches. The cloud bases were 800 feet off the ground, and both approaches we could go down to 200. So it was plenty of wiggle room there. It's just so gratifying to shoot an approach and break through the base and on glide slope, on, lined up laterally, just it's so gratifying. And this time in particular, because the winds were super light, so you're not fighting the needles to stay on your alignment with the runway. It was just super easy and super gratifying.
So your track doesn't look like this?
That's exactly right.
Doesn't look like a
That's
snake
exactly
or
right.
some.
And there are a lot of things as a VFR pilot that I like and still like today. I mean, a butter landing is always good, but it's rapidly become shooting approaches and then also breaking through the clouds going on a climb out is still, it's just, words can't describe it. So I'm going to drink a beer.
This guy today, the pilot that I met today, he also said, get your instrument rating. It'll make you a 10 times better pilot. You'll file all the time, and all this. And I just thought, well, if there's anything consistent that I have heard, like I haven't heard one person say like, get it, but like it's 100%. And you're one of those people, Ben. And we talked about that when you flew into Nashville here not long ago when we had some lunch. It's like, that's the thing to do. So, I mean, ultimately when it comes to understanding weather, being cognizant of en-route weather, really knowing or having as many options with weather, I mean, it really kind of boils down to the essential nature of just getting the instrument rating. And that's something that I'm hell bent on doing. It's just going to be probably this fall or into the winter before I can do it. But I'm seeing that all roads lead to, to that.
I struggled with the training. I loved the training, but it's very cerebral. It's not about maintaining a 15-degree bank angle or maintaining your altitude. There's a lot more to it than that. And just like the whole reason I love this podcast is that we're all doing this at a later stages in life. We all haven't been to any type of formal education in years, for probably most of us. And I really had to hit the books and really kind of think through this stuff. So it was very challenging, but just super, super rewarding.
Yeah. So, Chris, do you have any offhand thoughts or things that you've kind of grokked from anybody that you've sort of had in passing, or all you thinking about right now is just I don't know, saltwater rinses?
Well, saltwater rinses horrify me. I know some people who are really into that whole
the neti pot.
Yeah, and like it freaks me out. I can't do it.
Sorry.
I'm convinced that it's like I'm gonna pour a brain-eating amoeba into my skull and like die.
What kind of water you got in West Virginia?
I'm thinking about, exactly. It's our water. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are things. I just enjoy conversing, like most pilots. Like I like talking to anyone and everyone about anything and everything flying related. And so, like, I just think contextually, the more, it's not all right either. I mean, you talk to some people and there's bad people have bad habits and bad advice too. But I think just in the big picture, the more contextual conversations and the more people's perspectives on flying that you can hear, it really helps to form the bigger picture. So I really take any opportunity to talk to anybody. It's a little bit outside of the scope, but like you talked about your experience with Ben and with the mechanic, the professor at Ocracoke. One of my favorite people to talk to is our AMP. That works on our airplanes. I just feel like every time I talk to him, I've got some new nugget that I didn't have before about how the plane works, or it's not directly related to flying skills that I'm doing, but I just love picking up tips from him. So
that's definitely the next level, right? Is, whenever you can talk to somebody that's done the interdisciplinary thing, the AMPs that are also pilots, like the professor is, or even just, hopefully everybody heard our last episode with opposing bases. Was that last episode?
Episode, yeah.
Which, if you haven't listened to the Opposing Bases podcast, then you need to, but or at least listen to the one that we did with them. It was fantastic. But I mean, when you get people that are pilots and also are certifiably involved in another parallel discipline to aviation, you just get this kind of exponential effect, of insight, I think. And so the question really is for Ben, when are you going to become an A&P and an air traffic controller?
That's a lot to ask for there, Brian.
In your copious spare time while you're
Actually,
on
I
the work
would
trip.
say so. I am truly the luckiest guy I know. And to add on to what you were just saying, the guy that I share the airplane with is my brother-in-law, and he just retired from Delta. And I'm sitting here bragging last week with my number of hours I have. He's got like over 20,000 hours. Ironically, I have more hours in the airplane than he does. So, but I'm always quizzing him, and a lot of it's what the airlines did. But there's some overlap in how we should manage our flight plans and weather. A big thing for me, and the best piece of advice that I'd gotten from him, I had not had my instrument rating yet. I was a VFR pilot, and if there was just a little hint of something that I didn't like about the weather en route, I'd can the flight. And he basically just said, "Look, as long as you have outs, you can't make it to your destination, but have plenty of other places to go, then just go for it. Don't be scared. Just you got to start putting yourself out there." And it was, it's a fine line, but I started doing that, and that's really where it really started getting fun.
You'll never fly in the summer if there's ever anything on your path that you don't like. You'll just never fly. That's what
You
I've been
will
finding.
never fly. You're absolutely. And in the winter, Chris, you've got icing to worry about.
Yeah.
And if there's a thin, I used to be. I'm still afraid of icing. Don't get me wrong, but there would be days when I would see that the freezing level would be at 4,000 feet, but there wouldn't be a cloud in the sky. And I'm like, I don't know if I should go. Or if the freezing level was a little higher, but it was just a thin layer, and you might pick up a little bit. Again, I want to respect the ice, and I don't plan on hanging out in it for any period of time. But my brother-in-law had done a flight, and I was like, God, how bad was the icing? He goes, I just went through a layer and a little accumulated, but 2 minutes after I went through it, it melted off. So
Yeah.
it's we have to be careful. We have to be cautious, but you also have to. It's that fine line of you got to put yourself out there too.
So I feel like I've done a better job of that. The last two flights that I've taken to Newport News for work, both of them had things that were troubling. The last trip down, we had like a lot of clouds. Now VFR again, I have other restrictions. I don't have I have cloud, like I literally do have to be able to like clear a mountain and be below the clouds and like legally do that. But there was clouds everywhere, and we had some crazy challenges to like spiral up and around and like get through a teeny little hole that we just kind of picked our way to, and we're like, oh, we can circle up and get above this layer and get through here. So we did that, and then on the way back, I had the last time I had my first ever experience, and we watched it. We checked it all before we left. Speaking of en route weather, Brian, like we saw the front kind of moving through, and there were some scattered showers, precipitation along our route of flight. But we said, that should not be a reason to not. I mean, the plane still flies in the rain, so like that's not a reason to not fly. And we flew. We had two different encounters with moderate precipitation on our way home, and that was my first real, my first significant amount of time in rain. And of course, like everybody says, it's also no big deal, and everything's fine, and that's part of flying. But
until you experience it for yourself, you're not going to be able to extrapolate that into the next situation where you have to go through that yourself.
Right.
And at One Dull Geek, that's that advice I gave to you. That's where it stemmed from, because I was in the same boat as you.
I think there's also a part you can't ignore of, like, I realize sometimes that I have subconscious kind of programming of, like sort of 1970s movie of the week kind of scenes of, so if it's raining, that immediately means something's wrong because it's about to go bad, So I don't know. I try to recognize sometimes when it's just sort of like it's an emblematic concern, not based in actual realities of aviation. But you don't realize sometimes that stuff's kind of back there, right? Like it's a little bit of like tapping into some weird, 1979 anxiety or something. But anyway, so here's another point that I got. So I don't know if you can pull, like, Chris, I don't want to make you do things, but I also actually never mind. So there's a guy that flies out of John Toon here. If you look up, like, I don't know, anyway, he's got a TBM, and it's like he got the first TBM of some variety or something that's like the craziest. Yeah, TBM 900. If you Google TBM 900 Dale Schneider, anybody or Chris or whoever, you can check it out. But it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. The first video that comes up is he got the 100th TBM 900, and there's this video of him receiving it, and it's just like hyper produced, huge, like, oh my god. Like, anyway, this guy's a very experienced pilot and has a TBM 900, and I ran into him. It was really funny. There was a day where I was out on the ramp and I was, fussing about a flight school plane. And it was right after a big storm had come through, so everybody was coming out to see their planes because all these planes had to be pushed out to the tie downs because we've been short on hangars over here and all this. Anyway, so this guy's got a TBM. It's like the 100th TBM ever, the sort of special edition TBM. It's just sitting on an old building foundation out on the side of the airport somewhere, because that's all we had at the time. But anyway, he sees me and he asks, I guess maybe I looked like I needed help or something, but I don't know. We just ended up chatting, and he was inspecting this TBM and wanted me to kind of look around with him. I don't know, just another pair of eyes. Just let's try to find anything that's wrong with this plane. We found a couple of this is him. It's receiving his plane. It's like it looks like an Apple product release on acid or something. But I mean, geez. It's just like Steven Spielberg produced this guy getting his airplane. But anyway, there was a couple of like, oh my God, why can't I remember the name of it? Just the static,
static port?
No, the static wick.
Okay.
A couple of those were sort of missing and whatever, but it wasn't anything too bad. But we got to talking, and we were sitting out there. It was kind of raining still, and I just felt like I didn't want to bother this guy. Like I was not good enough to even talk to him or something. And I mean, this plane is outrageous. Like, imagine buying a plane where like it gets unveiled to a crowd, and it's behind a curtain and all this or whatever. Oh my God! And it shows him like, look at this. That's the guy. Look at him. He's like, this is great. I'll take it.
That is my lottery plane, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, that guy, I ran into him on the cruddy ramp at the cruddy airport, and I asked him, I said, okay, do you have any nuggets, for a newer pilot, anything, any sort of bits of advice that you just really feel like you should impart? I at the time I maybe had a few flights after my check ride, like I was maybe 65 hours or ish. And I'll never forget it because we had been talking, and it had been kind of a casual conversation. When I asked him to give me a nugget of some wisdom, he kind of took pause for a second, and then he lowered his glasses and kind of gave me one of these, like, now I'm not talking to you through my glasses anymore. I'm talking to your soul. And it was almost like I was being punished. Like all of a sudden he was my father, and it was getting scolded or grounded for something, like that sort of, it was almost like he was disappointed in me about something. Anyway, it was kind of heavy, right? Because he just, like I said, his whole demeanor just changed. And then he got real serious, and he looked straight at me, and he said these two things. He said, and I'd like to talk a little bit about both of them. And obviously people in the chat, please jump in with whatever things you have too. But number one thing is, he said, he pulled his glasses down and he looked at me and he said, nothing is more dangerous than a plane full of pilots. And I was like, ooh. And then he went on to tell me about an incident that he had with a plane full of pilots, and I guess a runway excursion. And anyway, some stuff happened. So he was basically just explaining that everybody else thinks the other guy's got it. You know, there's some kind of weird psychology that takes place where you're kind of, I don't know, you're either putting, I don't know, it's a weird, you could probably psychologically analyze it from a lot of levels, and, you know, 3-4 pilots in a plane, what happens there with people's bravado or ego versus just people feeling like, God, there's so many competent people on the plane. Like if that's a thing, he'll see it. Or I don't know, you know, like, I don't know if Steve is in the chat, but Steve Cross. Oh yeah, there's Steve. Oh yeah, I was just telling him this story the other day. We flew with some pattern work, and I was telling Steve, and I make this a point with any pilots that I fly with. I always take a minute before we even taxi, and I just say, look, I have no ego. You cannot hurt my feelings. If you see anything that you don't like that's going on, please say, even if you're not totally sure, you know, what's going on. If you're just like, I don't know, but this might be a thing, you know, tell me. And a lot of that comes from what this guy, Dale Schneider, impressed upon me in that one moment. Cause I just thought, what can I do preemptively to get in front of that too many cooks in the kitchen thing?
Was the second thing he imparted on you, speaking of your video the other day with Steve, was the second thing he imparted on you how to slow taxi like a boss when there are like 2-inch big birds on the runway in front of you? I thought, and you cracked me up. Like, I was like, is he going to get out and like shoo, like shoo the birds off the runway? Because you were like, it was like, birds up ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
It cracked me up. The whole bird sequence cracked me up.
You might not think that I care about animals, Chris, but I do. No, I mean, they wouldn't move. That was the thing. Is like they would not. You know, I was calling them conscientious objectors. I was like, what are they holding signs
like,
or something?
These last three. He goes like, this last group. These are the conscientious objectors. They just would not get. I'm going to lay their life down on that taxi.
Right.
That got me good.
I was like, yeah, we're gonna have to clean the windshield again, guys. But you know, so yesterday, or that was a couple days ago, and then it was even worse this morning. But anyway, I really took that to heart, you know, because I do feel like, you know, when I first got my certificate, and I flew with a bunch of other people, not a bunch of a few other people that were right at the same kind of point where I was, like brand new private pilot, and I especially, you realize that training, as much as it's regimented, is very different. People get emphasis by certain teachers and certain schools on certain things, and then other stuff that, you know, I might be really hyper aware of, they're not even thinking about. You just realize how much there's a variation on that theme. So anyway, nothing's more dangerous than a plane full of pilots, which is why Ben's never been nervous while I've been in his plane.
That's fair.
But no, but that's when in the video that I made,
as far as you know.
Right. But Ben, you know, like I'm telling you, like I talked about it in the video that I made, that talked about the Ocracoke thing, but it's really like, you have hundreds of hours more experience than I do, not thousands, right? But by proportion, you know, it's so many fold, and it's really amazing how just visceral and tangible it is. And I don't know if you have this experience, Ben, with other people that are above and beyond you, but there's just like a subtle, it's almost an intangible collective quality about just how it's almost like watching a cook that, you know, a short order cook that's really, really good. And they're just making nice with everything. And it's all just one flow, as opposed to just kind of maybe a little bit more herky jerky as you're a little bit newer.
So this is the reason why I love this podcast so much, and why I thank both of y'all for doing this. You're
welcome to come on anytime, Ben. This is great. Keep going. You're welcome to come on every time.
I was in the same boat that you and One Dull Geek, and probably a lot of the other people that are on this chat. I was not the same guy as I was when I was at 115 hours. I was nervous as all get out, talking through a bunch of things, saying the same things. And it doesn't change. I still feel the same way, but you build that experience, and you become used to it. I wanted to get to One Dull Geek had a question that I thought was kind of poignant. Thank you, Chris.
Oh yeah.
How do you draw the line between pushing yourself and pushing your luck? And I think that's an awesome question. I'm never suggesting don't be safe. As I started to push myself further and further, it's all planning the outs. Josh Flowers on Aviation 101 talks about this. He's got a 3-strike rule. If there's 3 things that he doesn't like about a flight, he's not going on it. That's a big part. If I'm a VFR pilot and I'm going somewhere where it may be IFR or not, there better be 2 or 3 options for me to land at that's not IFR. If I'm right on the line or something, it's not hard to plan your outs, your alternatives. And quite frankly, the alternatives make for a better journey. I have a quick story if we have time for it. Before I got my IFR rating, I was doing pilots and pause missions. I couldn't do Angel Flight because you have to be IFR rated. And I think Pilots and Pause is a great organization, and it was a project that my youngest son, who may be wanting, he's an aspiring pilot. We would do these trips together, and we went and picked up some dogs in Hickory, North Carolina, and we had to fly them down to Cordell, Georgia. And we landed, we got the dogs handed off to the owners, and it was great. And I'd known that there was going to be, it was in the middle of the summer. It was, South Georgia in the heat. The FBO was this building built in the 1940s, and it was, you could go in, but there wasn't much there. And this thunderstorm had just popped up out of nowhere, and we were stuck there. We landed at 5, handed the dogs off. We ended up taking off at 11 o'clock at night. And I was thinking about getting a hotel because I was worried about exhaustion, but I felt really good. They had a coffee machine there. They actually made really good coffee. I was pretty wired. I was pretty good to go. And, I put my son in the plane, and 3 minutes after we take off, he's asleep. And I had one of the most beautiful night flights I've ever had. Went right over the heart of downtown Atlanta, had a great exchanges. We land at McCollum at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we can't figure out how to get off the airport because everything's closed and locked down. It's so we had to jump. But the point is,
don't skip over that.
Oh, we had to jump the fence to get to our car because the gates were locked. We didn't know where the gate was to let ourselves out. And I'm sure there's a video, security footage, while people are trying to get out of the airport and not in. But the point is that's a memory that I will never forget, and my son will never forget. A fond memory. And did it go as planned? Heck no. But that's part of the journey.
Totally true.
So to answer the question, plan your outs. If you've got outs, or if you've got 3 strikes against the flight, then don't take it.
Yeah. I mean, so when you mentioned Josh Flowers and what he categorizes as strikeable things, categorically, those things are sort of pretty like broad, it's right. Sort of like what it could be winds. It could be, I don't know, fatigue.
Yeah.
It could be, but it doesn't, all the sort of, kind of all the array of all the things you get taught, I'm safe and all the things you can kind of forget about the sort of hyper categorization of all those things and just go, if there's 3 of any of these things from any area, then it's probably best not to go. But yeah, I totally agree. By the way, I've landed in Hickory also. I landed there on the way back from the midlife pilot fly-in, and that was a memorable airport. It was nice, but I remember I came in, I was, that was the first 3-hour leg that I'd ever flown. And I was I was doing like the sort of like wake up my legs, and just trying to like, okay. And really, really interested in getting the plane on the ground. And I'm coming in on a short final, and the guy who's holding short is radioing to the tower talking about some crazy swans, some huge birds that are just right, like swarming right around the numbers. And so they told me to go around. So then it's fine. So then I go around, then I come back around again. And it was one of those where it's like, I should have gone around, but I didn't on this second attempt, because I felt like in a weird way I'd already kind of gone around. And so now it's like the time you put it down, I should have totally gone around again. I don't know what happened, but man, I slammed one so hard. I mean, I think that the controller, he had a little bit of like when he was giving me taxi instructions or whatever, you can feel like when they kind of almost feel sorry for you for how badly you just landed. You can kind of hear like like all
Like
of a sudden when the tower starts talking to you like you're a student pilot again, that there's a slight delicate kind of, you can tell that they're like, oh my God, this guy. Anyway, so that's my memory of hickories. I just really planted one down, man. It was bad.
I used to apologize. I used to apologize for my landings. I did it twice. After, like, when they would tell me a turn off, like, 5-2 Lima, turn left to Delta, I would say I left at Delta to the ramp. Sorry about that show or something. And I did it twice. And both times, I think, first of all, I'm not even sure they watch. I mean, I'm not sure they're paying that much attention, first of all, but also they were like, oh, believe me, we've seen worse even today. I mean, they're always like, I'm sure it always feels worse than it is. Like, that's been my experience from recording videos, truthfully. Like, I will think like, oh my God, that was the worst landing I've ever had. Like, that was unacceptable. And then you come back and watch the video and you're like, I mean, it really wasn't. It was
like
fine.
your Ocracoke landing, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The one where
when I started you doing that, I thought the same thing. Real quick, Sticky Weasel made the comment, I still tend to invent reasons not to go, then mull it over for days. I was the same way. I absolutely was the same way. But I think as you build more hours, there's going to be times where actually you find yourself in situations that you didn't intend on, that you may in your mind think are bad. But then after you've done it, you're like, oh, well, that was really nothing. And then that's going to increase your I don't know what I'm trying to say, your braveness to go out and try to extend a little further. I used to just fly to my hometown of Thomaston, which was 80 miles away, and not very much out of that. And then I decided to kind of jump in feet first, and I took a flight to Dallas, North Dallas last year. And we went up to Oshkosh last year. And now I'm planning a flight to Lincoln, Nebraska. I am also expanding my horizon. I'd eventually like to start doing some high altitude flying. We're all in different phases of our journey, but I promise you, I was in the same boat as y'all were. And Brian, I can't wait to watch your adventure where you point the aircraft and go for a couple of days. I think that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it was so. Well, thank you. We'll see how it goes. But I was just telling my wife earlier, though, we were just talking about the trip I'm about to do, and it was just, she just feels so much more relaxed about me doing this trip because it's not to meet people at a specific time in a specific place, and it's not goal oriented or time scheduled. It's just kind of loose, and she said that just brings my stress down so much about it. And I was like, well, it does me too. That's why I'm doing it. And really, it's the perfect sort of lessons, all the aggregate lessons I got from the midlife pilot fly-in and my experience with all that. It's like, now, what if I could do another long trip? What would I do? What would I take off the table if I could? And this way, I don't have to see you guys. I don't have to have like conversations. That's the only part that's a bummer is, you're just going to be kind of subject to whatever is. But I mean, I'll run into people. I'll find some things. I'll have some unplanned adventures, and it'll be on a schedule that's totally free. But one of the things is, one of the other lessons I got from the midlife pilot flying was when I was preparing for it. And I talked about this in the Professor in the Sage video I made. In preparation for that trip, slowly was trying to build up my endurance because I just hadn't done I hadn't flown this length and this distance, right? And so over time, I flew to Louisville, and then I flew to, whatever, just like 1 hour flight, 2 hour flights, 2 hour flights, 2 hour flights, getting to some 3 hour flights, to the point where I could then do, 6 hours in a day and it not completely kill me, which I learned two things. One, there's no need to fly 6 hours in a day ever. That's just not, I've done it. I've gone there, but it's not, I feel like I could 4 hours is not a big deal, especially if you spread out 2 hour legs. So that's kind of how I'm framing everything, I think. But ultimately when I thought about how to do this trip, I just thought, As far as lessons learned, scale back a little bit of the energy and the expenditure, and also in preparation, instead of doing all this cross country stuff, I've just been banging it out in the pattern all week and just getting, because once you start flying long cross countries, you're just doing one landing a day or whatever.
Yeah.
And it messes with you. And so I've just done, a ton of landings in the last week. Totally the opposite preparation, because I've kind of feel like I've got that other experience now to where I'm not venturing into this unknown, or whatever anymore. So that's kind of what I'm doing. But that brings me to the other thing that this guy, Dale Schneider, the TBM guy, what he said to me with the glasses looking down at me. The other thing he said was, don't let anything or anyone ever distract you when you are landing the airplane. And it's, again, one of those things where we're like, oh, of course not, but it's like, no. If you really think about it, you get real casual with your friends or your passengers, or especially other pilots, when you turn final, demand a sterile cockpit if you have to, but especially when you're on short final, like really focus on, he said, but basically put every ounce of your focus into that landing in that moment. And it's real easy when you get kind of not complacent, but just starting to get kind of used to it. I didn't have, any terrible landings this week. I had a couple bouncers and a couple of this and that and the other, but I mean, everything was safe and fine. And most of them were pretty good. And, when I was out this morning solo, I was having to tell myself, stay focused, don't get kind of lost in the scenery out here or whatever. So anyway, that was the other thing, is just, don't let anything get distracting at all on landings. And a lot of times it can just be the radio things that are going on, or, like some weird argument that's happening between tower and somebody, or there's all kinds of, it doesn't have to be somebody in the plane. But anyway, what do you think about that, Sage?
You'll get really good at that. And I think Wendell Geek made a comment, but when you're doing your IFR training, the way I kind of equate it to is, I think it was the Kevin Costner, where he was a pitcher, and how like the crowd noises would go completely mute and he would be completely focused in on what he was pitching. That's how you are when you're flying instruments on a final or shooting an approach.
Yeah.
You could put a feather to my ear or, thump me on the head. I'm not going to be aware of it at all. You just kind of, repetition, you learn how to focus all your attention. And it doesn't really matter what anybody else says. But you're right. I agree with him. He's absolutely right. When you're in your early stages, it is easy to get distracted.
I think he was kind of saying in perpetuity, never lose that. It's kind of what.
Right. No, I 100% agree.
Yeah, but I think what
you've seen in your videos. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I would say I think what Ben's saying though is like you as a pilot get better about. I mean, it becomes less about like having to control necessarily whether or not someone else is talking. Like you just don't. It doesn't matter. You don't hear it.
Yeah.
You don't hear it anymore.
You're absolutely right. People can talk all they want to. You're going to be able to block those distractions out.
Yeah.
But it's still a valid point. Today, you saw it in your videos. I've got the little hula girl on my top of my panel. I was taking off today and caught a gust and picked the nose up, and it dumped it in my lap. And I had no idea it was there until I was like en route and happened to look down. I'm like, how did that get down there? Over time, you're going to be able to train yourself to maintain that focus.
Yeah, I think.
Meanwhile, I took an airplane off recently, distracted by something as simple as my Apple Pencil had went somewhere I didn't want it to be, and I just thought that at that moment while I'm barreling down the runway, rotating the airplane was the time that I need to be digging for it, and was like, Cecilia called me out on it. Like as I rotated, she's like, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'll leave that for later. And like took off and got out of there. But like, it is super easy to do, especially when you get back in your comfortable airplane that you're like, you got all your time in and it's like, this is easy now. I don't have to think about this.
Listen, I made a mistake. It was pretty, not really embarrassing. I took my wife. I had a sister move to one of the islands on the Georgia coast. We went down to see her. On the way back, we're taxiing. I go do my run up, um, and I lean the engine to burn off any carbon buildup on the spark plugs and everything. I check everything. I look over. I do my flows. I do my checklist. Line up on the runway full power, and I am not getting anything out of that engine. And I got literally maybe 100 feet down the runway. I pulled the throttle and I looked at the mixture and I had left it really leaned out really far. I'm like, you're such a moron. How could you make such a stupid mistake? But we all do it. I mean, nobody is immune to it, and things are going to happen. You just have to learn from it. And my wife was looking at me like, why'd you abort it? And I'm like, oh, damn mixture. And I turned around. She's like, is it going to be all right to take off? I said, sure. And we put full power and off we went.
Oh, look, plane's fixed. Okay, we're all good.
Yeah, that was the cheapest fix I've ever had in that airplane. I can promise you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's also good to recognize and give yourself some grace on, because when something really, really is actually wrong, you really want your attention to go to the simple. Don't just assume that you've done all the simple things and go and start thinking deeper into the problem than at the beginning, you know? So if you were, you know, if you're whatever, you accidentally pull your mixture out and your engine stops, you know, it's like, check those things, you know, before you start thinking like, oh my God, the block must have, you know, there must be a
right. A couple of comments. Ivy, I tell my brother-in-law, I try to practice checklist discipline because you're absolutely right. Don't neglect it. And it's easy to just rely on flows and stuff, but you always back it up with a checklist. And Smoky Bear Air, I mean, God, I can't tell you how many silly mistakes I've made in the last 3 or 4 flights. You're never going to be immune to them. Just try to learn from them.
What checklist do you use? Do you have a custom one, or you just use the standard checkmate ones, or what do you use?
Because our airplane has a STC for an engine upgrade in the stall kit, it came with its own set of checklists. And then I took that, and there's a program called MiraCheck, MIRACHEC, where you can build your own checklist.
Uh-huh.
And and I laminated those cards, and you can edit it. You can add it to it. Like you can I put little funny things in there just to make sure, see if my brother-in-law pays attention. But yeah, like Lord's Prayer at the end of the before takeoff checklist, or you know, whatever.
Isn't that the whole reason why Van Halen had the green M&Ms thing on their rider for their shows?
Probably.
Just so people would read them.
But, you know,
yeah, because their lighting trust guys, I think they were mostly concerned about, and so they wanted to make sure that the people that were doing some of the most dangerous things, it was like a way to, you know, they could walk in immediately and see that if there's green M&Ms, then we got to go, go through all this.
Everything's already been done. But like the cruise checklist is 2 items, and I might not check that every single time, but you know, the important ones, Gumps check every single time. But yeah, they're making great points. Is what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't matter if you're 100 hours or 800 hours. It applies to all of us.
Yeah, I sometimes feel like the verbalizing the Gumps check in a 172 is frustratingly like a lot of it's irrelevant, you know. But I've just really been forcing myself to always say all of the things because I'm not always going to be in a 172, and I want to make sure that that's part of my habit. You know, I will.
Yeah, even when you come over to an airplane like the 235, you know, now you've got propeller and switches matter because of the fuel pump. I mean, even that, you know, that's a big difference. So I've noticed that too, and I try to do it too pretty regularly, and especially thinking forward to like if I fly something with, you know, gear that goes up and down. It's like that'll be a nice thing to remember.
I've never flown a plane with a carburetor.
Is that right?
I really don't. I understand the concept of when you use carb heat and when you don't, but I would be absolutely drilling down on those checklists if I were to get into your 172 to fly, because I don't have any time in it.
Yeah.
Well, so you'd have to do C-Gumps.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's wild to think about.
So what you're saying is that I have a special skill that I've refined over time that perhaps you do not have.
I guarantee you, there's probably a lot of skills that you have that I do not. I can assure you of that.
Hey, well, you know, we all, pretty much everybody in this chat on some level is some sort of a video creator or is capturing their stuff. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but Ben, you know, when we were at the Midlife Pilot fly-in, I gave you a GoPro. And then I think that since maybe you've gotten another one, is that right? So now you have two, and then you've got just one?
Just one GoPro right now. I'm working my way. I am slowly easing my way. It's gonna be a slow burn.
Well, but you're quietly, you know, publishing some time lapses and some other things, and so I can feel it start slowly starting to come on. I'm be super excited. I will be very thrilled, and I think a lot of people would get a lot out of it if you just got take the GoPro that I gave you and just send it back to me, because it's the only GoPro that you can't put a Gigantor battery pack on that will last forever. It's they've got the big battery packs for the GoPro.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 9, 10, or 11, whatever it is up to. And so they just skipped over the Hero 8, which is all of my GoPros are Hero 8s. So what I'm saying all this for is if you got another GoPro, get one that's not a Hero 8. Don't get one that matches. Get one that's like a Hero 10 or whatever, anything else. I don't care what it is, so that you can put the long lasting sort of battery pack thing on it, so that at the very least, getting your comms and just a basic record of the flights, because I just feel like I would learn a lot from just watching you fly. So no pressure, just
I
buy a
think you're
bunch of
giving
stuff.
me way too much credit than I deserve. But
Hey, look, man, I saw how you skirted that MOA.
I'm glad you didn't have your hand out the window, because that would have gone inside.
That was a great lesson. I learned they're actually really watching these things.
Yep.
And if you are even vaguely close to cutting the slightest corner, because you were just, you were
I was hugging it.
But you're, and you were just trying to get around, so boy, that guy came on, and that was a very interesting flight too. That's the first time that I've ever been just witness to egregious cutting someone off on final. That was, some guy was at Currituck, Chris, when we were coming in, because we were doing an instrument approach.
No, we weren't.
We weren't?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Positive?
I might have programmed it into the GPS. I usually back up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because you hadn't filed. Yeah. So, but anyway, we were on a straight in, I suppose, and maybe that's the thing. It doesn't work.
Well, there's your problem.
Well, but man, they just turned right in front of us. It was kind of unbelievable. Same altitude, pretty much. Just, it was like they were waving to us.
We were watching you. We were watching you from the window of the FBO, right? Because then the second one, if I remember correctly, Ben, you were not super happy with your landing, and I think we talked about that after you guys came in.
We certainly did. I earned the Captain Kangaroo Award that day. I bounced it all the way down the runway.
What was wrong with all of us? Seriously.
Oh, they were all I had.
It was bad. I think there was a lot of adrenaline, all excited. I don't know.
One Dog Geek reminds me that I have I'm one to talk about straight ends. I had a great video of that in Beckley, West Virginia, where I was so mad at another airplane who wasn't talking on the radio but was flying appropriate patterns. I was mad as I'm coming in on like a 15-mile straight in.
I think I'm a target for people cutting in front of me. I actually had somebody do it at my Towered Airport. The pattern was a lot of training, and there was a CFI in this airplane. And, I'm clear to land, number one, and this guy comes right in front of me, and the controller comes on and just rakes him over the coals. What in the world are you doing? I said, you're number two. And he just gave him the riot act. And he apologized to me, and I'm like, whatever. And I sidestepped and did a lap in the pattern. But yeah, I guess maybe I'm just a target for people cutting in front of me.
Oh yeah, One Dog Geek. Look at him. I'm not trying to
it.
brag. There's nothing more braggy, right, than I'm not trying to brag. He's just saying I am bragging because he was putting
He
them
did
down.
have very good landings. I mean, the whole trip, like
Yeah.
everyone I watched was like right on the money.
I'd like it noted for the record, all those Cherokee drivers that have those shocks for the landing gear, it's always going to feel good.
Well,
No such thing as a bad landing.
See, right? Well, so before we go, Chris, do you have any updates or coming soons or things that you want to plug? And we've done a terrible job on this episode of reminding people to do all the sharing and subscribing and the pressing buttons around the things that look like positive things to do or leave reviews or whatever. But anyway,
do those things. I've been slow as back into my old habits here in publishing videos, but I do have one almost done. It's actually an old one that I just never published. It's from the winter where I was in the right seat in the 172. In fact, the guy I'm with is in the chat. I'm actually Tyler Walmsley is here. He's a club member. He was with me back in like February, and we did some pattern work at Clarksburg, and I flew from the right seat, and that was exciting and fun. So it's just going to be a pretty basic video, but it's back in the 172. And then I have my first instrument, not lesson. I did some hood time building with a safety pilot. We have 5.2 hours. Speaking of pilots and Paul's bin, we did a big pilots and Paul's mission a few weeks ago in the 172. Ended up with 5.5 hours. We actually one of the legs was an IFR flight plan. We ended up in some actual IMC for a while.
Nice.
Flew an RNAV GPS approach. So I got a bunch of stuff in there that was super new to me and but very, very, very fun. And so I'm working on that one. So those will be kind of the next two videos in the pipeline.
Cool. And we also have a really, really great, I mean, obviously Ben doesn't get much better, but we do have a really great guest coming. And we'll just keep it under wraps maybe for now, but we'll just say probably one of the most prominent and talented aviation YouTube content creator people that's out there, one of the best, for sure, is going to be joining us on this very podcast, and it's going to be sometime in the future. And that's all. It's going to be it's either going to be 2 weeks from tonight or a month from tonight. That's my guess. It'll be either the next one or the next one. But but it's going to be great. So I've just said a lot of nothing and took a long time to say it, but that's kind of what podcasts are for, I believe.
Yeah.
If anybody has any other nuggets of wisdom, throw them in the comments on this, so they'll be lasting in forever in the Midlife Pilot archives. And let's see, is One Dull Geek bragging about anything else, or have we satiated? Oh, yeah, he's already okay. SoCal Flying Monkey. Yeah, I think I've heard of SoCal Flying Monkey.
Yeah, he does have a YouTube channel.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Ben, I can't thank you enough. And
listen,
really,
I'm really flattered that y'all asked me. Again, the very first episode that I listened to, just everything resonated so well. And for those that are low time pilots, man, just build the hours, get in your planes and go somewhere. That's all I can tell you. That's my advice.
Just take your trip.
Just take your trip. One Dull Geek says that is the nugget of wisdom from this episode, and it's from Ben Singer. Just take your trip.
It's like the sage is the Ken Kesey of aviation. All of a sudden,
I love your references. Your other reference was Buckminster Fuller, and I mean, where do you come up with these? It just blows me away.
My CFI made fun of me because he used to say that you have an analogy for everything. And he said that to me, but I would say it's more akin to, no, I'm just kidding.
Who was the person that you just referred to me as? I have no idea who that was.
Say what?
Who was the person you just referred to? The analogy was, I don't
Ken Kesey?
I don't know who that is.
Just Google LSD and then see what happens.
Awesome. Okay. I guess.
Just take
Thank
your
you.
trip, man.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's
Yes.
wrap it up.
But wait, people
Thank
are
y'all.
complimenting me. Can we hold on for a little longer?
That you're the Dennis Miller of midlife pilots. Is that the one you want, or would you were preferring the lyrical genius?
I think Dennis Miller is quite caustic.
I don't know about that. I
I
still
don't
think
know. Is he?
He's just a little harsh.
nah.
Yeah, but where is Dennis Miller? Whatever happened to Dennis Miller? Is he alive?
He's around.
He's
I
around?
bet you were a hard student.
Oh, it's the worst.
I mean, just in terms of like, I bet you did always have something to say about everything. Like it was just like like not in a negative way. But I just mean like there was always, it went into this deep space, and it was like you had to like really like get all heady about everything, and like I'm sure there were some challenges with that.
Well, what's weird is you have some teachers that encourage that, and then others that discourage that or de-incentivize that.
Yeah.
But no, you're totally right. I've got a lot of problems, but I've just found the right place. Just find other people that are equally.
We all have those same problems. We all have problems.
Equally neurotic people,
Yes.
and celebrate all of our problems. And now we've gotten to the point in life where we've chosen to have very expensive problems. So all of us are idiots, basically.
Thanks for all the comments and the kind words from everybody. Again, I really appreciate it. I'm very flattered by it all.
It was very fun to have you. I mean, we've obviously talked a lot, so offline, out of this context, but it was fun to have you on the show and
awesome
at the beach house and
on
the back deck.
Feeling better, Chris.
Thank you. I'm hopeful that I'm definitely on the upswing. It's day 9, but man, it's no joke, man.
Man, make it go by quicker. I'm just telling you.
Oh God, I can't do it. Brain amoebas. All right. Thanks for potting. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks, and maybe a guest, maybe not, but we'll definitely publish ahead of time when we know what's happening. Like and subscribe and all that, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.